So today I'm back in Ottawa and over visiting Carl Swail. And Carl's another model railroader who's been in our community for quite a period of time. Has been associated with the Ottawa Valley Association of Railroaders and is in a number of operating groups. So how are you doing today, Carl?
I'm doing just great.
Okay, so today we're in his layout room and we're going to talk a little bit about your interest in the hobby and then maybe what we can have as a tour and see some trains running. Sound like fun?
Sounds like a good idea.
So maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about your interests in the hobby, things that brought you to it and that sort of thing.
I guess part of it started out, my grandfather worked I guess sort of tangentially for and with the railroads.
Yes.
He was involved, I guess mainly he worked for the government, but he was involved in surveying some of the early lines. He emigrated to Canada in the early 1900s.
Yes.
So he was doing survey work on the line that goes from Quebec City north through the province of Quebec. He was also intimately involved in the evaluation that the government did of Canadian Northern and the other parts that went into the Canadian National.
Yes.
So he traveled across the country doing evaluation as an engineer.
So it's a bit in your blood then.
A bit in the blood, yeah. And you know, so as a kid, of course, you have the wind up and small, you know, and larger scale electric trains that we had.
Yeah.
And then when I was just becoming a teenager, I kind of got interested in it, and my parents bought me some HO equipment.
Yes.
And that's sort of what really got me going, and built a couple of layouts in the house as I was growing up.
So this railroad here is, what number is that in terms of building railroads? Can you even account for that?
It hasn't been that many.
Yeah.
Probably it's like 4 or 5.
Okay.
Something of that order.
Yeah. So when you were starting, you were probably very eclectic like the rest of us, kind of like all over the map, and then each phase you went through, it kind of focused in more and more.
Yeah, and I sort of fell in love with small steam.
Yes.
So the idea behind this railroad is that it's a branch line off a larger transcontinental line. And in fact, I've been using the Canadian Northern. It's the time period is roughly the 1930s.
Yes.
So you don't normally see any cars around here that are beyond 1939. Although there are occasional things which crop up anyway that I like.
Sure.
So that it's a short line that runs off the major transcontinental.
Yeah.
And winds up through the mountains. There are a couple of mines along the way that we'll see. And then it ends in a logging town, sawmill, and then a narrow gauge line that then goes off into the woods to pick up the logs and feeds to the
nature of this particular railroad is basically a number of industries that are resource-based, that are up in the backcountry, that have to get their materials to the main line and shipped for processing.
That's basic, the major shippers on the line are, and then of course the smaller shippers too.
Yeah. So we're dealing with lumber products, ore of different kinds, and coal.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of nice. And I noticed when I look at your layout room, it's like a lot of us, we're kind of cramped for space. Yes. What's the size of this particular room?
It's roughly 14 by 14 feet.
Okay.
Maybe, I'm not sure exact dimensions, but it's that sort of order.
And you've gone to double level, or 2 levels, in order to maximize your railroading?
To get the distance, I needed to put in a helix.
Okay. And is the helix in the room itself, or so it's built in the room? I'm looking forward to seeing that. Yeah. Those are always a challenge, and people like to see how you can do that in a space like this.
Yes. Now, of course, the disadvantage of it is that there's probably more track in the helix than there is in most of the main lines. So.
Of course, yeah. So in goes the train, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and then it comes back out.
At the top, yes.
Oh, no. I guess it's worth waiting for.
Oh yeah.
Now, I guess the other thing that's really nice too, when you're talking about small steam, when you're considering a space this size, is that your radius of your curves and the size of the rolling stock makes it easier to bend and twist it around corners.
It does, yeah. The minimum radius that I've tried to keep to in most cases is 24 inches.
Yes.
The helix is slightly narrower than that.
Yeah.
And then some of the industrial trackage is a bit narrower than that, but it's generally kept to that.
Now, by the look of it, we can look at it later, but what I've seen is it looks like there's some standard gauge and narrow gauge.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so the product lines that you found all of this stuff with, was it associated with new productions that have come out, or is it something you've been collecting over time?
I've been collecting it over a long period of time.
Yeah.
The trackage, other than trackage that's hidden,
Yes.
and that includes the helix. The trackage that you see is all hand laid, both the standard gauge and the narrow gauge.
Okay.
Majority of locomotives, the small ones anyway, are brass.
Right.
I've been buying locomotives for my standard gauge, my main line that I interconnect with.
Yes.
And most of those I've been buying now are the newer plastic and cast steam locomotives, larger scales.
Yeah.
Pacifics and Mikes and so on.
Yeah, so that's kind of nice too. The quality of the details have really improved in the last few years.
They have, and the newer ones are all coming with sound equipped and everything. So
sure.
just put them on the track almost.
You can let the whistles wail.
Yeah.
And I also notice here, let's just look at your farm. I think that's really quite wonderful. You've managed to, it looks like you scratch built or used kits to build your structures here.
Yeah, the whole idea kind of started off when my wife and I were traveling through North Bay, and the farmhouse itself is actually a model of the Dion Quint's house that was sold up in North Bay at the museum.
Yeah, for people that are not familiar with that, they're quite famous in Canada.
Yes.
The quintuplets. This garden here, that's very, very nice. I guess all of those come from Scenic Express type products, the corn stalks?
Yes, and Notch and various other manufacturers, yes.
You obviously must be a gardener because you've got that all set out very neat and tidy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you would build your garden if you were going to have one.
If I had one that big, yes.
I really like the scene of the dog chewing on the end of the sheets there that are on the line. I guess the lady there is going to be a little perturbed with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really like this fence. Isn't that something? I mean, you must have scratch built that right from the prototypes that you see here in Canada, the cedar rail fences, I guess they call them.
Yeah, and so I spent a bit of time looking around, going online, picking up some photos, and then it's the material is sticks from the backyard, and then they're of course all split down to hopefully scale size, and then built up.
So you weathered them and stained them to look like the prototype.
Right.
And so is that a formula you follow with a lot of things, that you look at as some kind of prototype and then do some drawings and then build them from scratch?
Yeah. I mean, the barn is one of the problems I ran into because I was looking for an appropriate barn, and most of the models are not of barns that are typical of this area.
Yes.
A lot of them are U.S. and so on. They're scaled for what they are.
Yeah.
So I went up into the area around here and took some pictures of barns.
Yes.
Found an appropriate one that looked so it would scale out about right, and then built a quick mock-up of it first. Made a few changes in the dimensions because I didn't think it looked quite right when I put it on the layout.
The technique do you put like cardstock underneath and laminate the boards on, or do you build a board on board with framing?
In this case, it is built with plywood.
Okay.
We can actually, if I'm careful here, it's pieces of plywood that I cut out using a table saw.
Yeah.
And then glued together with various pieces of stiffener.
Yeah.
And then all the material is glued on.
With the exception, of course, the back side.
The back side, you can't see it, so
Yeah.
I wasn't going to spend the time to do that. But
so the boards themselves, though they're on the outside, are individual pieces,
yes, they are.
And you've laminated it onto the plywood. What sort of, do you use paint or to stain, or how did you stain the wood?
That was stained with leather dyes.
Oh, nice. Yeah. There's good variety in the colors.
Yeah, of course, they were all stained first.
Yes.
In long strips, and then cut, and then mixed all up so that the different colors came through. And some of them are designed to look like they're a little newer than others.
Sure. And then the roofing is really nice too. Is that a corrugated metal
yeah,
roof?
It's Campbell's corrugated siding,
Yeah.
cut into strips and put on there, and then painted first, and then Bragdon Enterprise.
Yeah. How about this building here, the house itself?
Mm-hmm.
That's really quite interesting. It looks chinked logs along the side, and then you've got some kind of shaking on the second floor, and then a different front. How did you do the log and chinking technique? It looks wonderful.
It came that way, but of course it came unpainted. So, but it's based the chinking there is just really white paint rubbed on carefully so that it stays in the log. Between the logs, and then wipes off on the rest of it.
That's terrific. Yeah. I really like your trees. Did you make those trees?
Some of them are made, some of them are commercial.
Yeah. What sort of method did you use to create your trees?
Some of it's furnace filtered. Most of those ones are sort of way up in the back.
Yes. And I see some spirea up there.
Yeah, spirea, a large percentage of it is spirea.
Yeah.
With various kinds of flocking or ground rubber from Woodland Scenics.
Sure.
Then there are a few of the super trees that Scenic Express sells as well.
And your rock work is awesome. What technique did you use for your rocks?
It's plaster, cast in molds, cast in place.
Okay. So, I mean, they weren't large molds, and I guess were these ones that you made from rocks yourselves?
A few of them I made myself.
Yeah.
There are some that I did buy commercially, and again, I think it was Woodland Scenics which sells those. But
your technique for coloring them is quite good. How did you do that?
It's all done with powdered paints. The old poster paints.
Oh yes, the stuff we used in school.
Yeah.
Although tempera, I think they call it, eh?
That's right.
Yeah.
Although I'm running out of some of those, so I'm going to some of the inexpensive acrylic paints that Michaels and everybody sells.
Well, it looks terrific. Yeah, and as you say, you've hand laid all your track.
Mm-hmm.
The turnouts, did you manufacture those yourself, or are you using something like Fast Tracks? Or?
No, I manufactured those. They're all sort of built in place.
Very nice. Huh. And how is it attached? What sort of road bed do you have there?
Right where you're looking, it's all spline.
Yes.
Road bed. When I get into larger areas like the yard down below, then it's homosote and sometimes a bit of cork to give a variation in height.
The ballast is very interesting. It's obviously not a commercial product, or is it?
It is, yeah.
Is it? Oh, who manufactures that?
The light colored or the brown colored stuff that is on my main line is Woodland Scenics.
Okay.
The other part that's sort of a cinder ballast, I can't remember. I don't think it was Woodland Scenics. It may have been Highball or somebody like that.
Yeah.
I've typically chosen what they call N-scale ballast rather than HO, because I find them what they think is HO seems to be a little bit coarse.
Maybe something you'd find on the Burlington Northern Santa Fe main line.
But smaller lines, maybe not so much.